our presentation. So I've started now, and then I will also share just the introduction to our wonderful speakers today. Give me one moment for that. I'll pull that up. Okay, so sharing. It's so great to see all of you here. Really appreciate it, and such a fabulous group of people. So the recordings will be available online, PowerPoints as well. All right, and Almira will be introducing our speakers today.
Yes. So today the first speaker is Dr. Mariza Tsakalerou, and she is an active researcher, practitioner, and academic in knowledge management, business clusters, innovation networks, and entrepreneurship. Her current research interests focus on the relationship between group learning modalities and new product development. She was a ministerial advisor for public policy initiatives and open administration and e-governments before becoming an assistant professor of the Master of Engineering and Management program at Nazarbayev University. Dr. Tsakalerou co-founded and developed and later sold A.com consultancy, responsible for the social media accounts of manufacturing and service firms. She is currently serving on the management board of Vertitech, a leading software developer and installer of educational management systems worldwide. Dr. Tsakalerou is active in international fora such as the OECD Idea Factory, the European Innovation Summit, the Joint Institute for Innovation Policy, and the European Higher Education Society, and a contributor to the Asia-Europe Foundation's Education Hub. Dr. Tsakalerou is a member of the Society of Women Engineers, and she serves as a reviewer for the International Journal of Learning and Intellectual Capital and the Journal of Science and Technology Policy Management. Now, please, you can start your presentation.
One more person.
Okay. Okay. The second speaker is our Dr. Asma Perveen. And Dr. Asma Perveen earned her PhD from National University of Singapore under Mechanical Engineering Department in the year of 2012. After completion of her PhD, she worked as a research scientist at Singapore Institute of Manufacturing Technology for more than 2 years. Prior to joining the Department of Mechanical Engineering, Nazarbayev University, she was working as an assistant professor at Bursa Orhan Gazi University in Turkey. Now, please, you can start the presentations.
Thank you so much, Almira. Yes, so the floor is yours now, Dr. Mariza and Dr. Asma.
I can share my screen. I hope everything is okay. You can hear me, you can see me, you can see my slides, right?
Looks great.
Oh, great. So I am really happy to be here today. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, GenCon, for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to present my thoughts in your consortium. My short speech is going to be on why and perhaps how we can empower STEM women to serve as transformation agents for society. So as you know, my name is Mariza Tsakalerou. I'm an industrial engineer, and my interdisciplinary research is focusing on knowledge management and innovation. So as any professor does, I am going to speak on our subject from the point of view of my field of expertise. Imagine yourself as a tiny fly looking through the glass. You only see a tiny fraction of the window, and you think that there is no object standing between you and whatever delicious treat is from the other side of the window. The fly probably thinks that the glass isn't there. So there it goes, straight to the window glass, and bam, it bumps into something invisible. It looks around this large glass window, and even if there are dirt smudges all over the window, it probably can't see it because of its very small size. So the fly repeats the process again and again. But whether it's one fly or many insects, birds, or other animals, this is a common phenomenon. Many living creatures beat themselves against a glass window. Some of these beings can also be called women in STEM, and the window can be called this invisible barrier that prevents us from exploring the full potential in our field. And that's why we are talking about women's participation in STEM. Being a faculty in engineering, I'm acutely aware of the issues that handicap women in STEM. And having this in mind, me and my colleague Asma, we decided to investigate the gender gap in science, engineering, and technology, its causes, and if possible, recommend some interventions. We know by now that long-standing biases and gender stereotypes and work conditions are steering girls and women away from science and related positions at various stages of their life. UNESCO actually estimates that only around 30% of all female students select STEM-related fields in higher education. But at the same time, increasing the proportion of women in STEM higher education does not necessarily translate into a greater presence in research or in high positions in STEM professions. We have, as the speakers before me highlighted, we have female students that are actively pursuing bachelor's and master's degrees, but the numbers drop off abruptly at the PhD level. And increasingly, women are more prone to abandon a research career than men. This discrepancy actually widens at the research level, with men representing 72% of the researchers' pool. So this is the leaky pipeline phenomenon, and it is part of what I'm going to discuss today. Why this is happening? Is this okay? What can be done? These are some of the questions that I'm going to address today, and I hope it will motivate the discussion and calls for action. There is this inherent belief that men are simply better equipped to handle certain jobs. It's not just me saying that. There are numerous examples, and I'm going to state some that are close to our field, which is education. So, for example, we have data, we have information from the Case Center organization on the top awarding case studies and the best-selling case studies that are distributed to colleges and universities every single year. So for this window between 2009 and 2015, a total of 53 different case studies were selected. Some of them were bestsellers for several years, and some of them were bestsellers and award winners. You would expect to see few women at least featured in this elite population. But what was found was quite surprising. In these 53 case studies, women were simply absent in 24 of them, totally absent. Only 7 of them had women featured as a protagonist. And that's the funny part, 2 out of those 7 case studies that had women featured as a protagonist, they were actually men. The case author felt that there weren't enough cases featuring women and simply changed the name and therefore the sex of the protagonist. So 46 case studies written by men, including the ones with women protagonists. But none of the teaching notes for these case studies with women raised their gender as a potential issue in analyzing the case. And I mean, in some cases, in some courses, this should seem relevant to the course topic. This is a very critical omission because research shows that similar behavior is interpreted differently when observed in a man or a woman. We have a very interesting example. We have a pair of Columbia Business School professors that they took a Harvard Business School case study about a venture capitalist named Heidi Roizen and changed her name to Howard in half of the class they taught. So both the groups were given this identical case study about a real-life entrepreneur. The study was describing how this person became successful in her job by using personality and good networking skills. So imagine this in a Columbia Business class course. Students split into groups and both groups read the exact text, except for the name change. One group is reading about Heidi, and the other group is reading about the entrepreneur named Howard. The professors then surveyed the students about their impressions of Heidi or Howard, and they asked the students how they felt about the entrepreneur's personality. The results were shocking. While both Heidi and Howard were rated as equally competent, students said that they found Heidi less humble, more power-hungry, and more self-promoting than Howard. Howard was considered as a likable colleague, more likable than Heidi, and she was considered as selfish, not the type of person you want to hire or work for. The Howard case study group found him to be smart and leader material, while the Heidi group considered her as too aggressive. The text was identical. Why were the results so different? The only difference was the name that this reflected on the gender. Success and likability are positively correlated for men and negatively correlated for women. When a man is successful, he is liked by both men and women. When a woman is successful, people of both genders like her less. And this becomes the norm that leaders are mostly men. So consequently, women are facing this huge dilemma in the workplace. They are led into a double bind. In order to be successful, it becomes necessary to demonstrate behaviors that are typically associated with men. Assertiveness, rigor, self-promotion. But as women apply these exact same techniques to demonstrate their competence, their behavior is misinterpreted as selfish, aggressive, difficult to work with. So when women act like men to display the masculine characteristics and traits that are associated with leadership, they are not liked. But when they are softer and they are displaying stereotypical female traits, they are liked but not seen as competent. It is really important to raise awareness about this topic with both men and women. This way, we can all challenge our very own biases and critically assess how gender stereotypes have been manifested in a work environment. Please take a look at this graph. Men are mostly assigned, when they go through reviews, they're mostly assigned the attribute analytical, which mostly resonates well from an organization standpoint. It's like to interpret, to strategize. But on the other side, compassionate, where is assigned for women, is more relationship oriented. So if you are an employer, who would you like to hire? And this was the why part that I was discussing. And I will move on to the question whether this is okay. This has been the status quo for many years. And I want to focus on why women in STEM is important. And you're probably thinking, well, Mariza, you're a woman in engineering. That's why you're saying that. And I'm not just saying these things because I'm a woman in STEM, but because there is an emerging realization of the world about the importance of diversity in general and women in particular on innovation and economic growth. So, what does it take to create innovation culture? The keyword is diversity. The concept of diversity in the work environment means nothing more than understanding, accepting, but also recognizing the value of differences between people, different cultural characteristics, different scientific specialization, and of course, different race or gender. The presence of women in innovation has its own specialized role. If we have to think, we will have to wonder, why do we have to depend to only half of the population when the challenges are enormous? Well, as you can see from my slide, the impact of diversity innovation is well discussed and has been analyzed in many research institutions. The correlation between the companies that have a gender diverse management board or gender diversity overall in the working environment is proven to be quite positive and to improve business performance. It has been known for years now that there is a significant relationship between diversity and the profitability of a business. And it is a very current issue that is discussed in all progressive and innovative organizations. The evidence for this need on diversity are plentiful. The numbers are there. We have a study from the University of Maryland and Columbia University. They studied the effect of gender diversity on the top firms in Standards and Poor's. And they studied a list of 1,500 firms. They examined the size and the gender composition of the firm's top management teams for 25 years. This is not a small sample. And then they looked at the financial performance of the firms. And what was found was that on average, female representation in top management leads to an increase of 42 million in firm value. They also measured the firm's innovative intensity. And they found that companies that prioritize innovation, they saw a greater financial gain when women were part of the top leadership ranks. The examples are everywhere. Studies from MIT and Carnegie Mellon state that the greater the proportion of women, the better the team's results. And at the same time, female business executives are tripled in the number in the recent years, but the overall percentage of female business executives is still 50% less than men. So going back to my questions, diversity, it's not okay. We cannot afford the situation of not having more diversity and more inclusions for reasons that go beyond social issues, whether it's on a case study or real life. It's of great importance to realize that businesses with great diversity in their skilled human resources tend to perform significantly better. The schema is quite simple. When we are limiting the experiences, the views, the perspectives of the members of an innovative team, the number of solutions that are explored is limited. The best case scenario would be that just fewer ideas will be evaluated. But the worst case scenario means that all the inherent prejudice of a team will be normalized. The hard reality check. Whether this is a research and development team or a corporate environment, women are not making to the top of any profession anywhere in the world. It's not my quote, it's not me saying that, that's a quote from billionaire Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg. You name it. The numbers tell quite a story. 190 heads of state, 9 of them women. In the corporate sector, women at the top are C-level jobs, board seats, it tops out at 15-16%. Of all the people in the parliament, women are only 24%. And this state of mind is from 2019. The numbers have not moved much for the past 20 years. And in some cases, they are even going into the wrong direction. And whether we like it or not, we are using money as a proxy for position and power. This report was released 2 weeks ago, and it uses a different measure of who has the power on a college campus. This report looks at who holds the 10 highest paid jobs at the US top research universities. The report is called The Power Gap Among Top Earners at America's Elite Universities. They reflect on publicly available data on more than 2,000 top earners at 130 research universities. The key finding, as you can see from the slide, is that women are notably absent among those top earners. And we are talking about higher education. In addition to being a moral exemplar, I think it could and should be the first sector in every sector, in every economy, to reach gender parity. So we have this data that are divided into three groups: core employees, it's about presidents, provosts, deans, faculty, medical center positions, and any employees who work in athletics. So the report details actually that there is no shortage of women. 60% of women occupy professional jobs in higher education, but that hasn't translated into top pay for them. Women were 24% of the top earners in the core group of employees, and just 18 of them held the highest paying position at their institution. The share of women among top earners at medical center was even lower at 12%. And of course, the group of employees that women did the worst was athletics. And if this is true in advanced and progressive societies, Western societies, the reality checks for the rest of the world are equally disappointing. On average, in Kazakhstan, where we are located now, a woman's salary is 67% of a man's salary. And only 2,000 women were involved in programs like Nurzoli, and they only account for 11% of workers involved. In countries like Kazakhstan that they want to accelerate their development trajectory, we know that innovation is the key to success. But innovating while increasing the participation of women with proper allocation of the talent, why depend to only half of the population? So on the left side of my slide, you can see that the conclusions from UK's Innovation Investment Fund, they characterize that women's involvement in the country's innovation ecosystem is crucial to the future. On the right part of my slide, you can see how women innovators are lacking. We can see that the percentage of female inventors is of course rising, but the improvement is so slow that we will need 118 years to reach gender parity. We will need 118 years for women to reach 50% share of inventors. Women's participation, of course, in boosting economic growth is not just a theory that is manifested in research papers. The transformation of economy and therefore the society unfolds through the gender equality. This is not only a pressing moral and social issue, but also a critical economic challenge. If women, who account for the world's half working age population, they do not achieve their full economic potential, the global economy suffers. McKinsey estimates that achieving employment parity will result in a whopping 26% additional growth of world GDP. And as this report states, both advanced and developing economies stand to gain. Yet, the fact remains that women comprise barely a third of all researchers. And this is the challenge that we are all facing that calls for solution in several levels. There is no holy grail. There is no holy grail. We know that. But if there is something quite powerful from our side as educators to contribute, I mean, we cannot do much on the policies that need to enact regarding pay gap or gender audits or even prohibiting pay secrecy. The value of our profession lies in personal development of the students and not only in their academic skills. And in this case, this aspect is equally, if not more important. Our job as educators starts long before our students reach the level of pursuing a top job or a political appointment. Our job is to keep more women in the STEM field because we see a lot of women dropping out even before entering the game. I have seen this in my work at the Master of Engineering and Management program. I'm quite disappointed that only one of my students I saw was here earlier, Madina. I can sense empirically how female students gravitate towards me. And I can see that they have this thirst for a role model to follow. Part of the solutions that are recommended in the programs of the schools and the universities is that we should have more female mentoring. But what I'm discussing today, what I think that we need to know as individuals, what are the messages that we as academics should get across to our students? These are the things that I am thinking out loud with you today. So as I was trying to wrap up my presentation and highlight my main message, I recalled vividly the speech of Christine Lagarde that she gave at Nazarbayev University. She was still then the head of IMF, and of course, an amazing role model for women everywhere. So probably her most referenced, her most famous quote is the one on your screen, that for women to get to the top, you need skin as thick as a crocodile. I relate more strongly to another quote of hers. Ask yourself every day, did I help another woman today? And I challenge you to think about this quote. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you. Asma, do you have something else that you will be sharing, or?
Yes, Asma has also.
I'm not so sure. We're out of time, I guess, right?
If so, I'm okay with this going further also, right? So I'm available. I know that others may need to leave, but you have come prepared. And so if it would be great if you can choose if you want to go ahead and present your work, that would be great. This is being recorded. It can be shared elsewhere, or if you want to schedule another time, we can do that also.
All right. In that case, I can carry on. All right. Great. Thank you.
Wonderful.
All right. Let me share my screen. Okay. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk about this. Just give me 1 second. Very good afternoon to all of you. And with the continuation of the presentation that is done by Mariza already, I just would like to pitch in some more information regarding the women participation in STEM. So I would like to basically talk about why we are talking about women participation. So what's happening in US and Europe, just to give you an idea, and we want to see a bit of a Kazakh perspective in it, and then what happens in NU itself. And maybe we are on track or we are not on track, so we'd like to have some kind of summary based on that. Now, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so the first question that comes in mind is why we are basically talking about this woman participation in STEM. So Mariza already talked about the projected GDP growth with more and more women participation in STEM, right? So we all like money, good paid, well-paid job, and good economic independence and so on. So it seems like that we already have a lot of reasons for us to just overcrowd the STEM, but that is not the case clearly. So what I would like to do is I would like to throw some light from a different perspective. I would like to see why we see this woman perspective in STEM, why we need that woman perspective in STEM. So, of course, clearly there is no equal participation or representation of women in STEM. In fact, Mariza already mentioned about 1/4 of women that is working in STEM field, and not to mention about the top executive positions that are holding only like 11% of the women. So what is the big deal about the fact that women doesn't want to get involved in STEM? So the way I see it, like we have been actually taking our men as the specimen of our species. So in this way, the result is like we are endangering our women. So let's see what does it mean basically, okay? So for that, we need to understand what science is missing when women are missing in STEM, all right? So we can start with maybe some design problem. So we usually encounter a huge amount of bias and ethical concern when technological solutions that we see mostly are developed by the team that are made of men only. So every day, as a woman, we come across the product that are designed just not right. So how is so? Let me give you an example. So when the airbag first invented, that was invented to prevent the injury during any car accident, right? So it was designed by the team of a man and then designed for man only. So women, as a woman, when we drive, we tend to go forward because we are smaller in size. So we need to reach to the pedal, and then we have to also sit upright so that we can see over the dashboard, right? So this is not the correct driving position. It is basically out of driving position. So women being in smaller, we didn't see much benefit from this technology, okay? But only when the women were included in the design team, the problem like that, start seeing some sort of better solution. So we need diverse perspective, as Mariza already mentioned, to solve any problem and to create any product or any solution that comes with less biasness. So being half of the population of this planet, I think it is equally important that we represent our women's perspective in everything, basically, right? So let me give you some more example. Men are more likely to be involved in car crash, right? So which means that they dominate the numbers of the injury that happen. But when the woman is involved in car crash, she is more likely to get injured 73% time greater than man. Okay, and it's also likely that she is more likely to be 70% time likely to die. Okay, so it's all to do with the basically how this car is designed and for whom it has been designed. And then we can think about also the other kind of risk. That is, when you're in the car, you have a rear end collision. So being women, we have less muscle on our neck and then upper torso. So this makes us more vulnerable to whiplash, which we are more likely to be 3 times get the whiplash compared to the men. So the car design is normally amplified this vulnerability. So the car have been designed mostly because the car crash test dummies are based on the male. And the situation become more worse for the pregnant woman. So although there are pregnant crash test dummy already in there in 1996, but testing is not still done. I mean, it's not really a government mandate, neither in US nor in EU. So in fact, even this car crash causes quite a number of fatal death and related to a lot of maternal trauma. We didn't really develop any kind of seat belt that really works for this pregnant woman. So the research shows that these pregnant women, they use this standard seat belt, and more likely, like 62% of the trimester pregnant women, they don't really fit this design. So here we can note some point, like being smaller, a woman may sit closer to the steering wheel, or they might use the seat belt in a different way. But the difference is basically not just in terms of shape, size, or position. For example, the female pelvic has a different geometry. And then the male neck is stronger. So when it comes to the force that can bend. So the internal makeup of female bones are very much different than that of the male. And since the crash injuries and then fatalities that are often related to the bone fractures, so this may explain like a lot of disparities between the sex when we opt for the same design for man and woman. And we can also think about the personal medication. Probably you were aware of the fact that there is exclusion of women in the past toxicology research, right? So it has created a lot of flaws in our understanding about the adverse health impact due to the exposure to different kind of toxic materials such as arsenic or mercury, lead, and etc., which constitute serious public health problem worldwide, and it affects men and women in a different way. And this lack of data on women in toxicology model basically put us in potentially more risk. So a drug will be more dangerous to women than to men if we don't know actually what is its impact on women. So this hinder basically the goals of this personal medication. And then another example could be the voice recognition product. When this product comes in the market first, this the employee at the administrative position, they which is most likely occupied by the woman, basically, they couldn't really make use of this product efficiently, because this technology generally worked better for men because it was made a team that is made of entirely men. So it could be better effective if the voice recognition algorithm would be more sensitive towards the frequency of the female voice, which is usually different than the man. So the designer may believe that they are making the product for everyone, but in reality, they are mainly making the product for men. So it's time to start designing for women by including the woman in the STEM team, basically. So I would like to give us some data, as I promised in the beginning of the presentation. So this is some women participation data across the United States. Although over half of the college-educated workforce is women in USA, but they made up only, let's say, 29% of those people, women, that are involved in science and engineering occupations. So if you can see in this graph, we can see the substantial gender gap in engineering and computer occupation. And this fact basically contributes towards the underrepresentation of women in STEM. But the overall women representation in STEM is roughly between, like, I would say, roughly 35%. And so what happens in Europe? Okay, so, the data looks a little bit better. Okay, so here in Europe, you can see that 41% of the scientists and engineers are women. But the women that outnumber men in the same profession, we can see on the left corner, there is Lithuania, Bulgaria, Latvia, as well as some of the non-EU countries like Norway on the right side. But less than 1/3 of the researchers are women in, let's say, Hungary and then Luxembourg, and more surprisingly in Germany, which was led by accomplished female scientist, Chancellor Angela Merkel, right? So across the Europe as a whole, men usually dominate in high and medium technology manufacturing sectors. So there are 83% men in those sectors compared to 55% man engineer in the scientific service, okay? And of course, if you look at the Norway, their data looks good. It's looked like 55%. So they lead the world in gender equality due to, I think all of us, we know about this, the ambitious welfare and the social policies that they are offering to the women in their workplace. And let's see. So I gathered some of the data about women participation in some other developed country. And although it appears that women has fair share of overall participation in STEM, but if we look at very closely, we see that only the natural science seems to have the bigger women participation, and engineering, and then construction and information technology. Undergraduate in such a way that they don't have to work in a harsh industrial environment. And interestingly, these data reflect the scenario from the developed country, and we can imagine what is happening in underdeveloped country, right? And okay, so yeah, I tried to gather some data about Kazakhstan. So this data looks interesting to me because, as you see, these are the enrollment data. And according to this data, the share of female students basically outnumber the male student, almost all area except the technological sciences and technology and military and security sector. And also, if I look at the data for the master's degree, this is also look like women are more likely to get this master's degree compared to their man counterpart. So this data suggests, yes, women are more likely to continue their higher studies than the male, right? So they are quite studious in Kazakhstan. And after that, we can also see their percentage of female students in higher educations by major. So we can see here among the STEM majors, female students greatly outnumber male in science, slightly outnumber in mathematics, and engineering seems to be very much male dominating field as everywhere in the world. So, and the next slide shows basically the leadership position. So again, men are mostly dominating in the leadership role or the senior position in the higher educations. Although this leadership skill has nothing to do with the gender or ethnicity, but this kind of poor representation of women in the leadership basically leads to scarcity of female role model in Kazakhstan. And therefore, there is a greater tendency to perceive that leadership position is primarily masculine. And I think that's the reason women can be considered as less competent for leadership position here in Kazakhstan. So the next slide, yeah, I have some data from NU. I hope you'll be enjoying this. So I tried to gather some data. It's not really official data. It's like an unofficial data I got from the course enrollment. So these are the data based on several years for our engineering student. And if you look at the data, you see that civil engineering and then the chemical engineering, there are quite a bit of very good amount of women participation, right? But if you look at the mechanical and electrical, there is a lack of women participation. Especially, I can talk about my own department. Mechanical engineering really has a less number of female students. So I really don't wonder why, because when I was student, we were 4 female out of 70 students. That makes 5% of the class back in 2002. And the current participation rate, as you can see from this data, is roughly less than 20% in mechanical. So as a woman and also as mechanical engineer, I know how hard it is to get a job back then in industry. And people doesn't want to see women in the engineering factory. And I believe not even when I went for the internship. So my professor made sure that I take the internship in a place where I don't have to do anything. So I went for internship, and 2 months I sit, I eat, and I read, and that's all. So the scenario has not been changed because I got the similar feedback from our female students in engineering, because they got they got this internship, they go there, they're asked to do official work, to make tea, and so on. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. Even after 20 years, the situation is same. So then let us look at the faculty distribution in STEM. So I'm talking about NU, of course. So here, clearly, our female faculty are again underrepresenting, even though we have faculty from all over the world, right? Other than the Kazakhstan. So roughly, we have 20% faculty that is female in STEM, not only in our school, but I'm talking about also like physics, chemistry, biology. So what about our leadership position? Do not get shocked. All right. So as you can see here, I try to take some data based on the professor, associate, assistant, and then postdoc position, and then divide them male and female. So yes, we do not have any full professor in School of Engineering and Digital Science. And yes, we have only one female associate professor, that is Elizabeth, who happens to be our vice dean, thanks to our dean. All right. And if I look at the assistant professor, female, we have some good number, but still we are actually a smaller part of the total number of the assistant professor that we have in our school. And in terms of postdoc, yes, we do have some gap. But computer science department seems to have good number of female postdoc. So, so yes, we are not there. We are not on track. So what we can do? So yeah, I mean, I do know what we have to do, sort of, because I am woman and I have been through this, and also I am sort of rare engineer in engineering, because you will not find a lot of mechanical engineer in engineering. So, but based on some great thought that has been already put up by some greater mind, I just gathered some ideas. Okay, so what we have to do, we need to create awareness and support about how rewarding this STEM field could be. So it is our opportunity as a woman to do something greater for the humanity and for our planet. So only awareness is not really enough. So we need to make sure that our girls get exposure since their early childhood. And they know about the choices that they can make later in their career. And this effort can start in early childhood, but it must continue in the middle school and then high school. And we need to give our girls some role model. Mariza already discussed about this, because this role model gives them believe. They can believe on themselves because they see there are women out there, okay, that may make this thing possible. So they can also believe on themselves. So apart from that, we need to create channel and organization to assist the women and make them aware about these STEM career opportunities and growth. All these opportunities that we discussed, we need to make our next generation or the girls aware of those things. And last of all, yes, we also need to work on the policy to make every environment supportive for equal participation of women. We have to make it like a culture, and then we have to break the stereotype that we cannot do that. So this is something probably we will not be able to do that, but those people that are, I mean, those that are in the leadership position, that are in the senior position, they can help in this policy making, all right? So based on what we have discussed, as our society faces the greatest challenge of this 21st century to ensure the healthy living for everyone, to adapt the demographic changes, and then looking for solutions to climate change and then environmental sustainability and so on. We always look forward to science to provide the answers. And to find these right answers, the science needs to deploy all the best talent it can have. And until now, the success rate in attracting and then the retention of this woman has not been very good. We all know that. So we need to increase the number of the women participation in STEM field. It's not only about the harnessing the best talent to tackle all these challenges that are faced by the humanities, but science is also the foundation of well-paid careers that boost the economy. And when we boost the economy, in turn, it gives us the greater social and political voice of our own. So as per the World Economic Forum's report, the benefit of this can be very large. We can share as a society the whole benefit. So a diverse workforce can keep our perspective fresh, and our ideas can be even more innovative when there will be equal participation of men and women. So if it is not the world we want to live in, I think we all have to get involved. We have to speak up, we have to be assertive. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I think we don't have much choice based on the fact that we saw so many bias, even the design of the product that we use. All right, so I guess we are limited by our imagination, so we just have to think bigger. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Asma. This is both of y'all. This was just really so many things to think about, and the active solutions also of how we can move forward. Thank you all also just for sticking around with us. So I have if y'all have another 10 minutes available, then what we could do is have a bit more, some Q&A, as I know that people were very interested in this topic. So I wanted to just kind of mention again, right? We're looking here at empowering STEM women, it's a transformation agent for society. And this perfectly fits within what we do with the Consortium of Gender Scholars, in particular this week, right? We just celebrated International Women's Day, and where we've looked to extend it into Week of Women, where it goes beyond just a level of, you know, perhaps presenting flowers and other gifts and recognizing the external beauty or caring, some of these other terms, right? Compassion, as Mariza, you were mentioning these terms, and also to recognize the analytical nature, the power, the influence, and these other major roles in which women have taken on. So I will stop sharing now and open the floor. Do people have questions and comments?
If I may ask a question.
Come on in, Vasilios, thank you.
And I will address it to Asma. No, seriously, let's be practical. If tomorrow you were the Dean of Engineering, right? No, seriously, what would be the 1, 2, 3 things that you would implement immediately to try to solve the problem, to some extent, of course, of having so few female faculty members? What could make a difference?
This is not the only situation in Kazakhstan. So I guess it's a common problem everywhere. And I saw that you become dean in our school and you immediately took Elizabeth. And that was kind of like, to me, a greater example, the thing that you have done. And I as a woman, I appreciate it a lot. So
that was last year's. That
yes.
was last year's news. What do we do now?
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying that you started to use the faculty that are already available to pull them into how to say, into the level that can actually represent a role model to us. So when Elizabeth became a vice dean, so it looks to me like, okay, there is some kind of woman perspective is already in the management level. And so I suppose it's not about that you can change the whole thing, but when you're promoting women that they are already in the system, I think that also helps in a way. So when my students see that, okay, the professor, Elizabeth is our professor, but then she's in the vice dean. So for them, like, I think it's like a great motivation. So
I will push you a bit more. Give me something new, something additional.
Yeah, I know that. But what I'm saying, like what you said is correct. We cannot really pull people or come Kazakhstan or become a faculty here. We cannot do that. But probably we can promote more Kazakh faculty, female faculty that we already have in the pipeline, let's say as a postdoc. Probably that would be a good starting. But at the same time, probably to put female faculty in a role that can represent that, oh, they are in the decision-making position. I think that gives extra inspiration to any of us, also to me. When I look at Elizabeth, I was like, oh yes, I can also do something one day. So I think this may also work for the students as well. And probably there'll be more students, okay, Professor Elizabeth in civil engineering, but civil engineering, we already have a lot of students, honestly, 50%, the ratio is very good. But then mechanical, if you look at mechanical, this has been, I think, historically, it's the department that is like continuously underrepresenting women. So
do I hear a candidacy for the chair of the department?
Vasilios,
no.
I have to interrupt.
You don't have to answer.
Are you aware of how many women are participating in the committees of the school? Have you checked these data? Do you think, like, percentage-wise, is it equal percentage-wise? I mean, it cannot be equal in actual numbers.
It's a very small number.
Yeah, but like maybe all the head of the departments are men, right? And they are more comfortable working with other analytical persons and not compassionate persons. And
I don't buy this argument about the analytical compassionate. You presented it so well. I don't think it's real.
It's not me saying that, right? It's not my argument. It's not my argument. It's like research behind that. So men gravitate towards other men to assign them on duties. If you are into this situation and you agree with us, and you exchange, the both of you, all these pleasantries, have you checked on the numbers on women participating in different committees of the school and taking place on the decision-making process?
Yeah, that's
The number is small.
Okay, so where is your contribution on that? Anara is seeing me and she smile. I can see
I
Anara
stand
smiling.
corrected, and now, no, I have my task for the day after.
All right, there's your task.
Yeah, thank you. That's why you're having this discussion. I mean, beyond the generalities, it always comes down to what do you do now? Expecting families in Kazakhstan to raise their daughters in some different way, or for society miraculously to transform itself, yeah, it will take forever, or it will not happen at all. But I do agree that the small steps that we can take, each one of us in our positions, can make an impact. They can make a difference, and eventually they can add up. And I'm sorry, Mariza, I was not exchanging pleasantries. I really wanted to hear her honest opinion, because
Asma was exchanging pleasantries.
Asma started very politically correct. My dean, yeah, blah, blah, it's a good dean. No, that was not the
no,
case.
no. I was not politically correct. Honestly speaking, this was a really good step from you. I must appreciate it. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I don't want us to monopolize the discussion. We can certainly continue this at a different level. So now I have to put more female faculty to committees and appoint Asma as head of right? For starters, right?
We agree on that. I think we agree on that.
Okay. Anara is still on leave, I think, so she can wait a little bit more. No, you're back?
All right.
I actually came back in July, so I'm I'm starting.
With this pandemic year, you know, who is back and who is not back, it's
Unclear.
unclear.
It's unclear.
Yeah.
Well, this is a good point, right? So thinking about the committees and thinking about now an extra challenge of being in the pandemic to recognize who is part of the team, especially we have new faculty coming on and we have various rounds, for instance, in promotion or on teaching and learning committee, for instance, at Nazarbayev University, at least, that includes the vice deans. And so if we only have one female vice dean, then women aren't quite at the table, right? Like this is a very different way of thinking about the world if we can't even be, if women aren't there to actually discuss. And so the ideas of actually of looking at our committees, at looking at trainings for instance, for hiring and for promotion committees, we don't have this official training yet. And this is one of the key points for at some point when we have diversity and inclusion department or an officer again, then these are the kinds of things that would be instituted. Looking at climate surveys, looking at one thing at GenCon, we're teaming up with the University of Massachusetts out in Lowell and their work that they've done on microaggressions that happen on the everyday level for, in particular for women, for people of color on a daily basis in higher education. And so actually doing more of the research and looking at implementing, as you were saying, Vasilios, and then your solutions, Asma and Mariza, about making these changes, having the role models. So having somebody else hired is a role model and it shows something different and it shows then the opportunities. The role models also, perhaps the university or in your department, you could allocate some funding to actually create then a model for mentoring, to actually offset whether, or maybe it's been teaching, but actually mentoring is part of the teaching and some of that teaching role goes towards the mentoring, recognizing its importance.
Well, thanks to the great work of Asma and Mariza, we also have the Women Engineers Club in the school with regular activities and meetings and support, but it's not enough. I will be the first to admit that it is not enough.
Gender quotas would be an easy thing to do. Gender quotas. We have this in Greece for in politics. I mean, gender quotas for women's participation at the decision-making process is something doable. And I'm not talking like 50-50, but put like at least a 30% of a gender quota. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
one thing can be done, if I may, because I saw that somebody is talking about recruitment, Anna Cohen Miller. Anna, I just wanted to mention that I was in hiring committee like years back, but I wouldn't say, I mean, I couldn't see one single female faculty that applied in mechanical out of like 100 CV I'm talking about. So perhaps when you are doing the advertisement for the recruitment, maybe we can also put something like some of the university put that we are going to emphasize on the woman diversity and all those things. If these are the statement part of the hiring, might interest or might, I don't know, motivate women to apply here.
That's a good
Perhaps.
point. Thank you. Yeah, that's a good point.
Absolutely, Asma, right? And some of those aspects as well, what we've seen from the research is recruiting. So women are often the ones who are raising or taking on the roles of raising families. And so as we heard also, we have researchers focusing on mothers in academia. So highlighting what we have available on campus, that we have play areas, that we have funding for, to help offset education and other opportunities that we can institute. So we've recently, right, we now have changing tables, for instance, on campus. We then went into, pandemic mode. And so mostly those haven't been used, but adding other aspects like that and resources that are on campus that in particular, women would need to access, right? A nursing room on campus. So you don't have to then walk back to your dormitory or, your campus building, or if you live off campus. So Stephanie, I see your hand raised.
Hi, yeah, I had another question. I was interested in the data from Professor Tsakalerou. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, but the data about women's perceived aggressiveness and likability and that double bind that women are in. I think that's really interesting, and I've seen that play out. And I'm just wondering if there's a generational component to that, if there's hope in the future, if younger people have different perceptions of that than older people. And just in terms of of anecdotes, if you look at US politicians, you had the photo of Hillary Clinton. And if I look at Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez versus Hillary Clinton, seems like a younger woman who was brought up with a lot more opportunities is able to navigate that bind between being aggressive and being likable better than someone like Hillary Clinton's generation was. So I'm curious if that change is reflected in data as well.
That is actually a very good point. And I was a big admirer of Hillary's, to be honest, and I think it was quite apparent from my slide. The thing is that this research, the data were collected up to 2018, so they are quite recent. Maybe the changes that you describe, I see them, I think they are real, but I think maybe the research didn't caught them up yet. At the same time, we are hopeful. I mean, we have this increase in students in women's participation in different like you see me and Asma, we want to be a part of the table. Maybe our mothers did not want, maybe they had this internal fear that they were afraid to express. The changes are taking place, but they are slow. Unfortunately, the data is quite current, like from 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. I think that's like, and I mean, we can also take a look at, we at Nazarbayev University, after the semester ends, our students evaluate us. And I think it would be an interesting research if the university allow us to take a look at the data, how female professors are rated and what, how the students perceive them and how they perceive men. I think it would be interesting to see if the students currently are using different expressions to evaluate me versus Dimitrios or Stefanos.
These are such great points bringing up, right? So evaluation from above, then also evaluation, we can think about how we're looking at student evaluations as well, or student feedback. This is something that in the US, at least, it has been deemed consistently discriminatory. And so why are we still using it? And why is this still a marker for promotion? I see other questions in the chat as well. Almira, you have your hand up, and I'm also recognizing the time. So I'm going to officially close this, but if anyone can stay after and is interested, then of course, please do. There'll also be a chance for to follow up with, seeing the PowerPoint and listening if you didn't get a chance to see some of the slides. I want to thank you. So Dr. Mariza, Dr. Asma, this was just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful presentation. And let me restate that. It was an incredibly powerful and insightful presentation that brought up topics that we at NU and internationally need to discuss. And so thank you again. In terms of the Consortium of Gender Scholars, just want to share with y'all, those in particular who are new to GenCon, if you're interested in getting more involved, you can share your thoughts about a GenCon event. These are some ideas. Suggest a new topic, event, or idea, such as mentorship. Provide ideas for a speaker, offer support, such as organization, social media, networking. You can email us at gencon@nu.edu.kz. You can join our mailing list if you go to our website, gen-con.org. And so feel free to reach out at any point. We will have in a couple of weeks our next speaker on March 31st by Dinara Hussein. She will be talking about being a single mom isn't lonely. And she has written a book on the topic and interviewed Kazakh women from across Kazakhstan about this topic. And it, like this one, should be quite insightful and offering us many thoughts for moving forward. And so as a final aspect, if anyone would, for kind of documentation and in the face-to-face realm, what we would do is we would bring people together to take a photo. If anyone would like to be a part of this photo, you can undo your video and join us. And I will go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you again.